Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome to Buckfastleigh on the South Devon Railway again. Just here on the platform at Buckfastleigh. You can see our diesel shunters there running. We've just pulled the diesel rail car into the platform to make it easier to show you around. So we've got our regular presenter, Alan Taylor's here just to give us a quick introduction before we go and say hello to Rodney.
Good afternoon everyone. We're relieved to know it's not going to be me speaking to you all afternoon. We've got a treat for you. We've got Rodney Cox back to talk about his favourite subject, that of motive power, traction and so on and so forth. Just a quick introduction. We are now well ahead with our plans to reopen the site here at Buckfastleigh, so we're really hoping that we'll be able to get visitors back in and around the site. There is quite a lot hopefully they'll be able to see, certainly to start with things like the Garden Railway, various exhibits around the yard, so that people will have something that they can enjoy. Entry is likely to be via donation rather than a fixed charge, and there will be suitable donation boxes including contactless donation payments at the entrance and indeed the exit. So that's all planned to happen by the 1st of August. As for reopening the railway, it's still a little way off at the moment, and we are sort of keeping a careful watch on what experiences others are having, and that will dictate if and when we do actually reopen to get the trains back running again. So for the time being, the donations, the appeal is still running, so if you can afford to contribute to that, that would be very, very welcome. Thank you to everyone that has done so far. I think that's enough from me. We'll find Rodney, who is lurking in the cab of our diesel unit here.
Driver Cox, you're more professional than our other driver presenter, Mr. Morton, because you're actually awake. So.
Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome again to the South Devon Railway. You'll appreciate that over the last few weeks we've had a look at various types of traction on the South Devon Railway, steam and diesel. I'd just like to say hello to Jack Harrison, Kevin Hampton, Ian Yolland, James Ascoff, Clinton Taylor and Ryan Lamb. Getting back to our traction, we've looked at popular steam locomotives and we've had a couple of looks at popular diesel locomotives. But today we're going to look at a type of traction which was often vilified by enthusiasts throughout the 60s and 70s, referred to as cattle carts, very little photographed, and in fact not really a point of interest with many people at all. And that is the good old-fashioned diesel multiple unit or diesel rail car. You'll remember in previous presentations we touched on the steam rail motor. The steam rail motor led on to the auto train or the push-pull train. That's where the steam locomotive is coupled to one end and one end of the train only, or indeed in the middle, and it has driving or auto cars where it can be driven without the necessity to uncouple. To work an auto train, it was necessary for the fireman, who was the only one on the engine very often, to communicate with both the driver and guard, and this was done by a means of bell communication. With the bell communication, there were a number of codes for auto trains, and this is the link that joins us to the diesel rail car. The codes that were used on the auto trains gradually evolved and became the codes that are used on diesel rail cars, and indeed today, when I left First Great Western with our Sprinter multiple units that we use, a variation on the same code is used today on the railways throughout Britain. And as I think I previously mentioned, from Scotland right down to Penzance, every diesel multiple unit suburban train owes something to the Great Western Auto Train because of the continuation of the buzzer codes. Just going to say hello to Ian Sells, Jamie Maltby, Andy Cornish, Neil Brown, he's missing the SDR, so are we all. Martin Palmer, Leanne Green. Can we still get to the farm?
That's the Rare Breeds farm
The
at
Rare Breeds
Totnes.
farm.
Yes,
Yes,
it's
yes,
still, it
you
is
can-
open every day.
The Rare Breeds farm at Totnes is open every day, and yes, there is access to it. Moving back to the diesel rail car, the first diesel rail cars were actually built by both the LNER, the LMSR had one, but the most popular one, as usual, is the Great Western Railway one, which was developed in the 1930s in a very, very Art Deco style. In fact, it looks like a vast bomb on wheels, but a beautiful machine, finished in chocolate and cream, and it was a diesel rail car, and it was a diesel mechanical rail car, because the driver had to change gear. And this is the difference with this diesel rail car and the diesel multiple units, or indeed diesel rail cars that we use on First Great Western and the other train operating companies. This one is diesel mechanical, and it requires the driver to change gear, whereas the Sprinter units on the railways of today, as I say, First Great Western and all the other TOCs, are diesel hydraulic. That's a little bit ironic, because in the 60s our beautiful diesel hydraulic locomotives, the 1000s, the Westerns, the 7000s, the Hymex, the warships, the 800s, were all deemed as non-standard and were scrapped because the entire rest of British Railways were investing in diesel electric technology. So they were marginalised and scrapped. And ironically today, on what was the Western region, now FGW, all our multiple units are diesel hydraulic with exactly the same transmission as those diesel locomotives. Just another quick hello to David Shaw in Bulgaria. Hello David, how are you? And John Morton, our legendary driver John Morton, says he's awake now, and hello to Sean Taylor as well. Thank you John, stick with us, I'll try not to bore you. Right, so we've got this diesel rail car, and if you look along it, it looks like any other railway carriage, a suburban coach, because if you look, instead of having just the doors at the end, like most suburban coaches built by most of the big four and subsequently by British Railways, it's got a door, and then it's got, I think it's locked. It is. Hang on, carriage key, let's have a look. Always have a carriage key and a cup of tea, most essential. If we look in, we can see there's a set of seats there and a set of seats there. Very, very comfortable and very, very convenient, because when the train actually runs into a crowded platform, all these doors can be opened, it can disgorge in next to no time, and a load of passengers can board again in next to no time. The station staff and the guard can walk along, slam all the doors, and you're actually away in minutes, as opposed to the larger coaches where they have to board at the ends, and it takes time for the passengers to filter down through. So it's got the good old traditional suburban layout. Hello to Darren Hill, a member of the Diesel Electric Preservation Group in Williton. Hello Diesel Electric Preservation Group. Hello West Somerset Railway. Great friends of ours. We just wish you all the best for the future. And hello to Brian Condick. Hello Brian. Hopefully you'll come back and join us when we do manage to open again. Alan Taylor spoke to you a little bit about that now, and we're really hoping to open the site up as soon as we possibly can. Back to the DMU. So we've got a coach, we've got a suburban layout that enables us to get the passengers on and get the passengers off in next to no time. Let's go and have another look at a really good feature, because one of the biggest beefs on the modern railway today is that we promote the beauty of the lines that we work over. And I was extremely privileged, based at Exeter, to work over the Exmouth line, one of my favourite lines from childhood, the Paynton line, the Barnstable line, the Oakhampton line, and of course the main lines. But the main thing was, one of the things was that people like to take their bicycles on the train. And today, because of the design of the modern trains, we are limited to take only a certain number of bicycles. But let's have a look at the old magic diesel rail car. Hello Jeffrey Broom, who with his wife did driver experience on this unit to Totnes, a fantastic few hours. Thoroughly enjoyed driving them on British Railways. The reason I enjoyed driving these so much is you've got something to do. There's a bit of skill to it. You've got on a 3-car unit, you've got 4 engines, 4 gearboxes, and you've got to find the ultimate point to change gear to give the passengers a smooth ride. But this is what I wanted to show you. Here's the guards van. If we come into the guards van, you can see that even though it's one coach, we have got a really commodious guards van, and this works in several ways. We can open up this door. Let's do the platform one, I think that'll probably be safer. If we open this door up, you'll see there. If we've got 5 bicycles on the platform, the guard can get them in next to no time. We can shut the doors and we can be away. And the other advantage is that if we've got a really, really busy train and we've got stations close together, what we used to do, we used to have a guard and an assistant guard, because very often a lot of the passengers knew that if they got on and they hung back a little bit, they could get from A to B without paying. So what some of the wiser guards would do, the train would run in, they'd throw open both the doors, everybody this way please, and they would funnel them into the brake van. One guard would stand that end, one guard would stand that end, and they'd sell them the tickets before they actually went out into the train, thus avoiding possible fare evasion. Going back to the bicycles, these seats, by the way, most of the brake vans didn't have these seats in, so you could get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you could get about 10 bicycles in here, and you could get all the luggage in here, and you could also carry the mail, because a lot of these units were also designed to carry mail. They had the bars over the windows, and indeed they would carry a few mail bags from A to B, so they were very, very versatile in that respect. So we've got a standard coach arrangement. We'll have a walk through the train now, and you can see the layout. It's the suburban layout. Nice, big, commodious seats. We can sit down nice and comfortably like that. In quiet times we can stretch out, and other times, as you can see, we can get 3 people here and 3 people here. And at the same time, hello to Mark Hallett, Tina Hand and Philip Kirkman. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you're enjoying it so far. So we've got quite a dense suburban layout here, and the other advantage is what we can do if it gets really busy and we've only got a single car, we can also have a number of people stood up. That's why you've got these grab irons here, so we can have people standing. So it's quite a high density unit, and a lot of the guards indeed in really busy times could have about 9 or 10 people in the brake van, so it would hold far more than you can initially see. So we'll have a walk through, and this is what attracted me to the diesel rail cars in the first place. Years ago, if you had a nice train driver, he would have these blinds up. Sometimes you would get on the train to go to Exmouth or go to Dawlish, and perhaps you had a driver who didn't like people watching what he was doing. These blinds, including a blind over here and a blind here, would all be down, so you couldn't see what was going on. But as a kid, if I came up the front with my 2 brothers and the blinds were up, I could sit here and I could intensely not only watch the driver driving the train and work out how to do it, I could also see the route in front of me. And it was tremendous, because you could sit at the front legally and actually see the railway. And I absolutely love going on the diesel rail cars. I'll tell you an embarrassing story. Many years ago, a young lady that I was going out with at the time, my mother volunteered the information about me getting interested in railways, and said that I used to sit at my little table, I used to steal my dad's big office stapler, I also used to steal mum's milk saucepan, and that was my diesel rail car, and I used to take all the bears along the hall to various stations, doing the buzzer codes and everything. And apparently I would spend, because I don't remember any of this, it was all slander, I don't remember doing that at all, but apparently that's what I used to do. So when Dad wanted to find his big office stapler, that was my power handle, and when Mum wanted to find the milk saucepan, that was the brake handle. Hello to Ricky West. Hello Ricky. He says keep up the good work. I say to you, Ricky, you keep up the good work, because he is our branch secretary for ASLEF at Exeter, and he is doing an absolutely sterling job in really difficult times, as are all our union officers. Hello to Simon and Toby Francis. They say we miss the SDR. We miss seeing you, and we miss working on the SDR, so we can't wait for the railway to reopen again. And also hello to Griff Hewis from Kingston. Hello Griff, Kingston, I think that's southern region, I do believe. Yes, the good old southern. So right, now let's go and have a look up the front. So we open the door here. Nothing more annoying, by the way, than when the blinds were up and the driver will be sat there and you'd have pilot working, or somebody else had to travel in the cab, and you'd get a massive rotund railwayman come and sit right in front of you so as you couldn't see where you were going. Most annoying. So let's go into the cab. I'll tell you another little story. I used to train train drivers, and I did so for 25 years. and my first trainee, we actually had the diesel rail cars on the branch lines, and we had to take this train from Exeter St David's up to Exeter Central, change ends, in other words go from one end to the other, and then take it through to Barnstable. Well, the previous driver had the blinds down. So I said to my regular mate, I said, right, I said, first thing we'll do, mate, I said, is put the blinds up, like that, lovely job. Oh, he said, I don't like this idea at all. He said, I don't really like the idea. I said, mate, I said, what you've got to concentrate on is what's out there. I said, we don't mind anyone watching us do our job because they enjoy seeing the scenery, they like watching the driver drive the train. And I said, we just get on with it nice and peacefully and quietly. So that's what he did, rather reluctantly. When we got to Barnstable, there was a knock on the cab side, and it was somebody from Manchester down with their family, and they said, do you know what? They said, in Manchester, we have these trains in Manchester, and they're actually painted, these windows are painted black, so we can't see out of them. So when you got on and put the blinds up, the children were absolutely delighted. So here's a drink for you, and here's a drink. He gave us a £5 each, which we subsequently invested in the Great Western Hotel at Exeter. Hello, Chris King. Will you be getting any more DMUs like 142s or 144s? Apparently not. I am reliably informed not.
Oh, there we go. It says we're live. Hello, everyone. Apologies for the interruption. Unfortunately, reliable phone signal, internet reception hasn't really made it to Buckfastleigh yet. Just see our viewers coming back. So once again, apologies for the interruption there. Hopefully one day we'll manage some better mobile phone signal in Buckfastleigh. So we'll just wait for some people to come back. Rodney had just got on to explaining the
Wilson epicyclic gearbox.
Yes, so we'll just wait for a few more of you to come back because you probably wouldn't want to miss this.
Come back, viewers, please. I didn't mean it.
Is our auto cue still connected? It appears to be, doesn't it?
It is, okay.
Yeah. Right, okay then, Rod, do you want to go for it again?
We're back, ladies and gentlemen. We were just talking about the means of changing gear and the fact that this is a mechanical unit and it's got a mechanical gearbox, but very different to that which you've got in a motor car. And the easiest analogy that I can draw is if you remember the old Sturmey Archer gearboxes on bicycles, where you changed gear and you pulled a little chain, and that in.
Hello, ladies and gents. Apologies for that second interruption. We're now outside of the rail car. We'll see if this makes it any better.
Are we on?
Yeah, we are live, Rod.
Right, we're live.
So apologies, everyone. Yeah, we'll let a few more viewers join us. It's not normally this bad. Maybe the odd interruption. Hopefully, it'll stay live this time.
We hope so.
Yeah.
We really hope so. Well, it sounds like we're back on stream. I think it's a question of modern technology against old technology. Know which one I prefer. Anyway, let's have a look in the driving cab, shall we? So if you come up and just zoom into the driving cab. Here are the driving controls. Well, let's go from right to left. That's the emergency brake. This brake, if anything happens, any untoward emergency, and the driver or anyone travelling in the cab, or indeed if the train is being towed out of service, if they require to put the brake in, they lift that one and that applies the brake immediately. We've got various switches here. These are the heaters and the ventilation system. This tab lever here is what actually puts the lights on and off throughout the train. Moving across, and this used to be a good wind-up, this is actually the parking brake. When the train is actually stabled in sidings and it's got no compressed air, all the compressed air is drained off and therefore the vacuum brake is ineffective, this one is actually screwed down like that, and it's like the handbrake in the car. That will hold the unit or the train in the siding and stop it from running away. But what we used to do sometimes, if we had little children sat behind us, I'd put my driver's bag down there and I'd sit down like this and I'd get my mate to drive the train, and as we were going along, as we got to a curve, I'd start going like that and they go, look mummy, steering the train. So that's the handbrake, that one there. This is the indicator for the automatic warning system. A very proven and reliable system throughout British Railways, AWS, automatic warning system. and basically what it's there, or what it was there principally to do, was to give warning of a distant signal. That's the yellow signal with the fishtail end, which tells you the situation with all other signals controlled by that signal box. So if the distant signal is down like that, all the signals are going to be clear, but if it's at caution, it's showing a yellow light, that means that all the other signals are possibly going to be at danger. So very, very easy to miss in the fog, and a number of accidents occurred. It's a really, really serious one at Harrow and Wealdstone, which prompted the introduction of automatic warning system. So when we get to a signal now, if it's at caution or preliminary caution, the colour light or whatever, 200 yards before it, we've got a series of 2 magnets, and they give us a warning indication, both audible and visual in the cab. And if we don't react to it by pressing that button there, the brakes will apply immediately. Quick hello. Oh, Clinton Taylor says, love rail cars as well. Great stuff. James Afscoff, what year was this built? Late 50s, early 60s. You've got me there. I think it's about 1958, 59 that this one was built. This one, if you have a look at the number, it's 55000. So this was the first one of the series, and this one actually is very, very indigenous to the West Country. I've got photographs of this one coming off the Kingsbridge branch at Brent, crossing over, and I've also got a photograph of it, a really nice photograph of it sat in the bay platform at Axminster going to Lyme Regis, or waiting to go to Lyme Regis. It landed up under Regional Railways ownership, and it landed up down at Lera Depot, so Plymouth Lera. So a very, very local unit, and one which we're very, very pleased to have on this line. Going back to the controls, ladies and gents, that's the actual automatic warning system unit there. That's what we call the change end switch, and that's how we isolate it in the event of a problem. That brings into play all sorts of safety regulations if we have to isolate that. So coming across now, here is the brake. This is the vacuum brake, and when I want to use it, I put the brake valve in like that and put it fully on. If I sit down here, now somewhere I've got the key. This is called a control isolating switch key, and this is what, a bit like the EP key on a diesel, unlocks the desk. So, and this unit is shut down at the moment. I can put it into forward like that if I'm changing ends, like so. I put my key in like that, and when I change ends, I have to look for these lights. These lights on the outside, these are engine lights. They tell me that the engine is running. Now we've got 2 engines on this train, so that one would be lit and that one would be lit, but the most important one is this one in the middle, because we've got 2 engines, 2 transmissions and 2 gearboxes, and we need to know that they're both lying in the same direction so that the train will travel safely in either the forward direction or the reverse direction. And if they're both lying in the same direction, those final drives that we talked about earlier on have both gone over to the correct direction, we get a light there. So what we're looking for is a light there, a light there, a light there. 2 engine lights and what we call an air and axle light. Hello to Evan Bradshaw from the Severn Valley. The unit was built in 1958. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Severn Valley Railway. And whilst we're on the subject, can I just say best wishes to the Severn Valley Railway. I think they've started operating, and fingers and everything else crossed that you do have a good what remains of the season. Best of luck to you on the Severn Valley Railway. So right, what we've got here, this is our throttle control, and this is our gear lever. So we're in direction now. So before we do anything else, what we've got to do, we've got to engage the dead man's handle, and if I let it go, it springs up. If I leave it like that, the brakes will apply and the train will come to a stand. So I have to keep my hand on that all the time. Now what I'm waiting for, remember we talked about the buzzer? I want 2 on the buzzer from the guard, and when I get that, I'll have a look to see that I've got the signal, and if I have, I'll go into 4th gear, pause, and that tightens everything up underneath. 2 on the buzzer, 1, 2, into 1st, release the brake, 1, 2, and hopefully away we'll go, nice and smoothly. And then when I want to stop, I shut off the power, come down through the gearbox like that, and just before we stop, that's our coasting gear is 4, just before we stop, so we'll put the brake in, apply the brake, and then just before we stop, into neutral, and then I can take my hand off. As I say, very often you've got 4 engines and 4 gearboxes if you've got a 3 car unit, because the centre car is not generally powered, but the two outer ones, the power cars, are. So you've got to try and find the optimum biting point with the gears to get a smooth transition, and sometimes that's quite a job, but it's also quite fun as well. It gives you something to, it's got a bit of substance to drive. Right, hello Catherine Sinclair. Are you open to just come and look from a distance, or the shop for the model railway? Is the shop open?
The shop is open Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at the moment.
There we are, our wonderful model railway shop. Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays is open, and what we're all gearing up to do, we're gearing up to open as like an open museum. At the moment we're not in a position where we can run trains, but what we're hoping to do is welcome everyone back to the site. We've got a wonderful museum, we've got some amazing rolling stock and some locomotives, and we're hoping to provide stewardship so that as you walk round, if you want to know something about the Collet Goods or the DMU, there'll be somebody on it that can answer your questions and indeed show you around. So we're hoping to have an extremely interesting and varied open air museum. That's the next part of the plan, as Alan touched on earlier. So getting back to these controls, as I say, you're going along, and as you're going along, your revs increase. So we've got a tachometer like a road vehicle here. When we get to the maximum revs like that, we shut off. So we're being first. We shut off, and then we let that drop a little bit. We change into second, away we go. And then when we get up to the optimum road speed and the maximum revs there, we shut off again. Then we change into third, and so it goes on. This is our tachometer, which gives us the engine speed. And when it goes, I don't know if you can see from there, but it's got a yellow segment on that gauge there. It starts there, and when it gets to its maximum revs, like that, that's when we shut off the power, let it come down, like that, let the engine drop back, change gear, and then open up in the next gear. Now sometimes, if that goes wrong, we do it by road speed, and I always remember these, 15, 27, 41. That's the three speeds at which we change gear on a diesel railcar. Jonathan Whitmore, are DMU carriages used in some heritage railway stock, like the Dartmouth Steam Railway, and why? That is actually very, very observant, Jonathan. Yes, they are. With the surfeit of the old diesel mechanical rail cars, towards the end of their lives, when they were being scrapped, a lot of preserve railways bought them, and the reason they bought them is because, as we talked about earlier on, they're very high density coaches. You can carry a lot of passengers, they're quite light coaches, and also the passengers can get on reasonably quickly, they can get off reasonably quickly, and if you look at the windows, you get a far nicer view out of these suburban coaches than indeed you do some of the mainline coaches with their corridors and compartments. So yes, they were bought by preserve railways. Yes, our friends over on the Torbay and Dartmouth, or the Paignton and Dartmouth Steam Railway, they do use them. Theirs are in a beautiful condition, always very, very highly polished and spotlessly clean. There are one or two DMU coaches over there, and indeed other preserve railways use them. And in fact, British Railways bought out a series of what looked exactly like DMU centre coaches, and they were suburban coaches. Unfortunately, they were non-corridor, and that raised all sorts of problems, but they bought out a whole series of them for use on suburban trains hauled by locomotives. Jonathan Martin, good afternoon, love the heritage DMUs. Ryan Skinner, what was the max speed of this DMU that this DMU could go in BR service? 70 mile an hour. Yeah, a DMU would do 70 mile an hour, maximum speed. The 150s that we got now are 75, and indeed our 158s are 90, but these were always 70 mile an hour. Their other versatile point, I don't know if you noticed when you saw the front end, but they've got buffers and they've got conventional draw gear. They've also got two vacuum pipes. Why have they got two vacuum pipes? I'll tell you. When we're stood still, like we are in the station, the engine is just ticking over. It's what we call idling. Now, the piece of equipment that produces the vacuum, in other words, draws all the air out the train pipe to produce the vacuum brake, to create the vacuum, called an exhauster, is belt driven from the engine. So it's only going very, very slowly. So it follows that if we're going to go and I try and take the brake off like that, unless we've got some other piece of equipment, the brake isn't really going to come off very well at all. So what I would have to do, with the brake still on, I would have to go into neutral, and I'd have to sit there revving the engines in order to drive the engines faster, in order to drive the exhausters faster, in order to create that vacuum to release the brakes. Well, obviously, for a start, that's totally unacceptable with the noise, totally unacceptable with the amount of fuel and the amount of fumes that we're using, and just general wear and tear not on. So what we have an ingenious system on the DMUs. When we actually create the vacuum, we don't only create the vacuum in the train pipe that applies the brakes, we also have massive reservoirs under the coaches which also create vacuum. So we have these huge vacuum reservoirs that when we're running along like that are locked off. They're just waiting until such time as we stop at the station, come to a nice stop like that. When we come to go away, into first gear we go, we take the brake off and we bring those massive reservoirs into play. That vacuum is connected to the train pipe and draws all the air out the train pipe, thus releasing the brakes in exactly the same manner as the exhauster. So once we get moving, of course, the exhausters that are driven by the engine, that's the pieces of equipment that draw the vacuum out, they take over and maintain the vacuum brake as we're going along. Ned Banks and Chris King both asked, what class of DMU is this? I believe it's a 1-2, is it a 121?
122 this is, isn't it?
122. The worst person to ask about engine numbers or class types is a driver. Years ago, if the foreman had asked me what engine I was on yesterday, hang on, it was 25, oh I don't know. But no, it's a 122. We used to have here at Buckfordsley a 127, which was the diesel hydraulic unit, a big suburban diesel hydraulic unit, very similar to a Sprinter in the way that it worked. At Exeter we used to have the 120s, and we also had the Swindon built 121s. They were a beautifully built unit with just the two windows at the front. Now I'll tell you a little story regarding those particular units. With this one, if we get any problems, we have to isolate that drive line. It's a reasonably straightforward process, and it relies on ideally having air and electricity, so we can set it all up and we can just alter that one to isolate everything underneath. If we haven't got electricity but we've got air, we can go down onto the underframes, open a little box, and we can push these electro-pneumatic valves and do exactly the same. But unfortunately, if we've got no air and no electricity, there's not a lot we can do. We have to wait for an assistant locomotive to couple up the compressed air, supply the air, so that we can isolate all the equipment. But the Swindon built units, you could actually do something about. You could lift a manhole up in the passenger compartment, you could take an oil dipstick out, and you could undo a plug on the side of the gearbox, and having set it up to isolate this piece of equipment, you could get the dipstick and gradually move it around until it isolated. All well and good, brilliant, we're ready to go. I did this when I was training. I was wearing a boiler suit and my pockets were full of bits of paper, carriage keys, all the sort of general ephemera that a driver carries. And the inspector said I'd like a volunteer to bend down and do it. I said, yeah, I'll do it, no problem, Governor. So we lifted up the manhole in the passenger compartment and down I went head first, managed to get the dipstick out, do the isolation so that it was centralised and it wasn't going to go anywhere, and then I tried to get out. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get out the hole. I had to shout for the inspector and my fellow trainee, hello driver Martin Shelley, or retired driver Martin Shelley. They had to come along, grab one leg each and pull me out through the hole. So sometimes enthusiasm doesn't pay. Gordon Evans, class 122 model of W55000 by Dapol is sold in the shop. So we have miniature versions of this. Come and get your DMU at Buckfordsley, please do. Hello to Rob Kitley, Brian Prater from Maidenhead, and Steve Wade. Hello Steve, how are you? Hope you're okay. That's another colleague on Great Western at Exeter, a friend and colleague. Thank you for listening in. Hope this has been reasonably instructive. Sorry a little bit about the problems we had earlier on. So that basically explains the controls of the diesel mechanical multiple unit, the high capacity vacuum brake, and as you can see we've got a tremendous lookout. The other advantage of this particular type of diesel multiple unit is on the front we've got buffers and a conventional screw coupling. So not only could it carry the passengers in the train, it could also carry what we call tail traffic. And in fact we had a train that used to leave Exeter at 4:05 in the morning called the 4:05 newspapers, and that was a 3-car diesel rail car with a bogie van coupled on the back. That's a long coach sized van with bogies underneath, And in there were the Surridge Dawson crew that distributed the newspapers. The newspaper van would be taken off the main train, shunted onto the back of our diesel rail car. The Surridge Dawson people would get in and they would sort the papers out into their various quires as the train went from Exeter to Barnstaple, so that when we got to Barnstaple the papers were all sorted and ready to go. So they're very, very versatile. On another occasion we could take a couple of milk tanks down. If they needed empty fertiliser vans, we could take them down. But I think the optimum example of how useful these machines were, in the afternoon we had a goods that used to go back from Barnstaple, and sometimes it needed a little bit of adjustment. If the cement company had managed to empty a few more wagons than expected, or if they'd managed to unload a load of parcels in the goods shed and the parcel van in the goods shed was ready to go back, we used to cross the diesel rail car without passengers obviously, from the station into the sidings, and we used to use a piece of machinery like this for doing shunting. So we would pick up the wagons, gather them all together, pull them up, put them on the train ready for the Barnstaple goods in the evening, pick up the parcel van, put that out in the middle road ready for collection later on. So they were very, very versatile. Not only were they very, very able to carry lots and lots of passengers, far more than they were meant to, because nobody likes leaving anybody behind, but they could also take newspapers, they could take paper traffic, they could take everything. They could take mail traffic. They were very, very versatile. Hello, Suzanne Madarin. Nice to see you at Houston. Hope the Houston Steam Railway's doing okay. I hope that when things like actually do get better, that you have a really good season, or the rest of the season, because we really do need it, don't we? Ned Banks, what's the difference between a class 121 and a class 122? Right, the class 121, the 121 was actually built at Swindon Works. Most of these units were built by the Gloucester Railway Carriage and Wagon Company. I know Wickham built some. There were various Metro Camel, they were another big builder of diesel multiple units. But the 121s, firstly, they were intercity units. They were a bit better equipped than these. They had curtains, they had tables. They were designed, they were quite fast units. They were designed to go from city to city. So they were very nicely laid out. They had a first class compartment. The layout was different. They had big windows at the front. The equipment was just the same, but all the gauges were down in one big column like that. So you could, as you were driving along, you could just glance at the gauges, and you didn't have to sort of look down or anything like that. You just quick glance like that and you could see everything. That was the principal difference, were that they were intercity units. They also had a slightly different coupling arrangement at the front. They were faster, and you had that additional facility where you could isolate the final drive with no air and no electricity, providing you didn't get stuck down the hole. So that's basically a quick introduction to the diesel rail car. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you can now see the development from steam rail motor, which ironically looks a little bit like a diesel rail car. That was swamped, so we had to go to the auto train, the push-pull train, with the engine in the middle of the coaches or either at one end of the coaches, and the development from that was to come to the diesel rail car. Well, that's about all I've got time to say this time, except to say thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for listening. As Alan has said previously, we are looking forward to opening. We're looking forward to opening as a sort of living museum. We're even more looking forward to running trains at some point in the future, but we can't say when that is. So I would like to offer a big welcome to the visitors when we can get back, and also to say to our volunteers, please hang on in there. Soon, very, very soon, we'll be able to have you back on site, and we'll be able to start work again, and won't we be happy? Wayne Fordham, afternoon Rob, best tea maker on the railway. Wayne is a very, very pleasant guard. I believe he's based at Weymouth now. Oh no, he's a driver now. Sorry, Wayne. Sorry, you're a driver now. But very nice for you to actually communicate with us. And I wish you all the best. And in fact, I wish you all the very best. If you can spare a few pounds towards our appeal, it will go towards keeping this unit ready, keeping this unit preserved, keeping our diesel shunter, all our coaches, and in fact keeping this steam railway alive for the future. We've got a beautiful fleet of steam locomotives, we've got a beautiful fleet of diesels, and we want to share them now and in the future with you. So if you can spare a few quid towards our appeal fund, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for listening.